The courtroom held its breath as Nathan Potter's mother approached the podium, her hands shaking as she clutched a photo of her murdered son. "He was going to be a teacher," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He wanted to help children." That's when Seandell Jackson's lips curled into a sick smile. The 19-year-old killer locked eyes with the devastated mother and began mouthing the most vile, degrading obscenities imaginable. His tongue flicked mockingly as he formed each disgusting word, his face twisted with pure malice. The woman collapsed backward, gasping in horror. The courtroom erupted. Potter's father lunged forward, screaming, "You sick freak!" Deputies rushed between the families as Jackson threw back his head and laughed with demonic satisfaction. His own relatives began hurling insults at the grieving parents. Judge Rebecca Dallett's knuckles went white, gripping her gavel. What happened when she finally brought it down would unleash absolute pandemonium. Before we continue this story, don't let Nathan Potter's cold case fade into silence. Subscribe now to uncover the shocking truth behind how justice was finally served. Ignore this, and you'll be turning your back on the hard-fought justice. Subscribe now, unless you're okay with letting the truth go unnoticed. September 15, 2009. The autumn night air in Milwaukee's River West neighborhood carried the sound of footsteps echoing off empty sidewalks. Nathan Potter, a 21-year-old University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee student, had no idea that two predators were already stalking him through the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Nathan Potter wasn't just another college student walking home that night. He was a young man with dreams bigger than himself. Friends described him as the kind of person who lit up every room he entered, always ready with a joke or a helping hand. At UWM, Nathan was studying education, determined to become a teacher who could make a real difference in children's lives. His professors remembered him as dedicated and compassionate, the type of student who stayed after class to discuss how he could better reach struggling kids. His family knew him as their gentle giant, tall and athletic, but with the heart of a teddy bear. Nathan's mother would later recall how he'd call her every Sunday without fail, updating her on his classes and asking about her week. His father spoke of their weekend fishing trips, where Nathan would insist on releasing every catch because they deserved to live too. This was a young man who couldn't even bring himself to harm a fish, let alone imagine the violence that was about to consume his final moments. The River West neighborhood where Nathan lived was known for its artsy, bohemian vibe, a place where college students felt safe walking alone at night. Potter had made this same walk dozens of times before, from campus to his modest apartment, never once looking over his shoulder with fear. But lurking in those same streets were Seandell Jackson and Derek J. Thomas, two young men whose lives had taken dramatically different paths. Jackson, just 19 years old, had already established himself as someone willing to cross any line for easy money. While Nathan was planning lesson plans and dreaming of classrooms full of eager students, Jackson was plotting robberies and calculating how much cash college kids might be carrying. Thomas, Jackson's accomplice, would later be described by investigators as the follower in this deadly partnership. But on this particular night, being a follower meant being complicit in cold-blooded murder. The two had been cruising the neighborhood, hunting for targets. College students were ideal victims, young, often naive, and typically carrying cash, phones, and other valuables. They had done this before, but never with such devastating consequences. As Nathan walked alone down the dimly lit street, Jackson and Thomas spotted their opportunity. They approached him with the casual confidence of seasoned predators. What started as a simple robbery demand, "Give us your money," would escalate into something far more horrific within seconds. Nathan, caught off guard, but trying to comply, reached for his wallet, but Jackson wasn't interested in a peaceful transaction. According to witness testimonies and police reconstruction, Jackson seemed to feed off the power dynamic, the fear in his victim's eyes. When Nathan moved too slowly, or perhaps when Jackson simply decided he wanted to eliminate any potential witness, the unthinkable happened. Jackson pulled out a gun and, without hesitation or warning, shot Nathan Potter execution style. The young education student crumpled to the pavement, his dreams of teaching children dying with him on that cold September night. Jackson and Thomas fled the scene, leaving Nathan's body bleeding on the sidewalk like discarded trash. When police arrived at the crime scene, they found more than just another robbery gone wrong. They discovered the brutal murder of a promising young man whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Detectives immediately recognized this wasn't a crime of passion or desperation. The execution-style shooting suggested calculated violence. The investigation team began canvassing the neighborhood, interviewing residents, and searching for any surveillance footage that might have captured the killers. What they found painted a picture of two young men who had methodically hunted their victim. But the breakthrough in the case would come from an unexpected source, someone close to Jackson who couldn't live with the knowledge of what had happened. Family loyalty would clash with moral conscience in a way that would ultimately lead to Jackson's downfall. News of Nathan's murder sent shockwaves through the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee campus and the broader River West community. Students who had walked those same streets without fear suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders. The randomness of the attack, a good kid killed for pocket change, struck at the heart of everyone's sense of security. Vigils were held, tears were shed, and demands for justice grew louder with each passing day. Nathan's professors spoke at memorial services about the teacher he would never become, the children he would never inspire, the difference he would never get to make in the world. But Jackson and Thomas thought they had gotten away with murder. They had no idea that someone who knew them intimately was wrestling with a decision that would change everything. The investigation was about to take a shocking turn that nobody, least of all Seandell Jackson, saw coming. The betrayal came from within Jackson's own bloodline. His uncle, the man who had watched him grow up, who knew his mother's heartbreak over her son's choices, could no longer sleep at night, knowing a murderer walked free while Nathan Potter's family grieved. The phone call to Milwaukee police would seal Jackson's fate forever. When detectives knocked on Jackson's door, his cocky demeanor cracked for just a moment. He had grown comfortable in his freedom, believing that family loyalty would keep him safe. But as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the reality hit him: someone he trusted had chosen justice over blood. The arrest sent shockwaves through both families, but for different reasons. The Potters felt their first glimmer of hope since their son's murder, while Jackson's relatives faced the devastating truth that one of their own was a cold-blooded killer. Derek Thomas was arrested shortly after, but it was clear from the beginning that Jackson was the mastermind, the triggerman, the one who had looked Nathan Potter in the eye and chosen murder over mercy. April 2010. The courtroom was packed as Jackson's trial commenced, with Nathan Potter's family occupying the front rows, their eyes never leaving the defendant's table. From the moment Jackson entered the courtroom, his behavior revealed the monster beneath the surface. While his defense attorney tried to paint him as a young man who had made a terrible mistake, Jackson's own actions destroyed any chance of sympathy. During witness testimony, as prosecutors described the execution-style killing in graphic detail, Jackson sat back in his chair with visible boredom. When crime scene photos were displayed, images of Nathan's body lying lifeless on the pavement, Jackson actually yawned. The jury members exchanged horrified glances, unable to comprehend such callousness. But it was during the victim impact statements that Jackson's true nature fully emerged. As Nathan's mother approached the podium, her legs barely able to carry her weight, Jackson leaned forward with interest, not remorse, but cruel fascination. She began describing her son's dreams, his kindness, his weekly phone calls that would never come again. Her voice cracked as she spoke about the empty chair at their dinner table, the graduation ceremony Nathan would never attend, the children he would never teach. That's when Jackson began his psychological torture. He started with subtle smirks, then progressed to eye rolls whenever she mentioned Nathan's accomplishments. When she broke down completely, sobbing as she described identifying her son's body, Jackson actually licked his lips in a grotesque display of satisfaction. The courtroom gasped in horror. Nathan's father, a man who had spent months trying to control his rage, finally snapped when he saw Jackson's reaction to his wife's pain. "You sick freak!" he shouted, lunging toward the defendant's table. "He was our baby!" Deputies restrained him as Jackson threw back his head and laughed, a sound so chilling that several jury members visibly recoiled. But Jackson wasn't finished with his performance. As Nathan's sister took the stand, describing how she now feared walking alone at night, Jackson began mouthing obscenities at her. When she faltered, intimidated by his predatory stare, he made kissing motions with his lips. The judge threatened to remove him from the courtroom, but Jackson's defense team convinced her to let him stay, claiming it would prejudice the jury. When the jury returned with their verdict, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, Jackson showed no emotion. But when Judge Rebecca Dallett announced the sentence, everything changed. "Life in prison without the possibility of parole," she declared, her voice steady and final. The courtroom held its breath, waiting for Jackson's reaction. For a moment, silence. Then, like a dam bursting, Jackson exploded into a profanity-laced tirade directed at the judge. "You can't do this to me!" he screamed, using language so vile that the court reporter struggled to keep up. "I'll appeal this! You'll see!" Judge Dallett maintained her composure, but Jackson wasn't finished. As deputies moved to escort him out, he broke free from their grasp and lunged toward the bench, his face contorted with rage. What happened next transformed the solemn courtroom into a battlefield. Deputies tackled Jackson to the ground as he continued screaming threats at the judge and the Potter family. In the struggle, pepper spray was deployed, sending witnesses scrambling for the exits. Jackson's own family members, instead of trying to calm the situation, began hurling insults at the Potter family, blaming them for destroying their boy's life. The scene was pandemonium, lawyers shouting over each other, families separated by a wall of law enforcement, and Jackson being dragged away in restraints, his voice echoing through the halls, as he promised revenge on everyone who had betrayed him. As the courtroom finally emptied and order was restored, one question haunted everyone who witnessed Jackson's meltdown. Was this the end of his reign of terror? Or just the beginning of a new kind of psychological warfare from behind prison walls? The aftermath of that chaotic day would reveal whether the justice system had truly contained the monster or simply caged him temporarily. The pepper spray had cleared, the screaming had stopped, but the questions remained burning in everyone's minds. Was dragging Seandell Jackson away in chains true justice for Nathan Potter's execution-style murder? Did his courtroom meltdown prove he was exactly the monster prosecutors claimed? Or was there something deeper driving his explosive rage? And what about his uncle, the family member who chose to betray blood for justice? Does he sleep better at night knowing he put his own nephew behind bars forever? Most haunting of all, if Jackson could terrorize a courtroom full of armed deputies, what kind of psychological games is he playing with fellow inmates right now? Your answers to these questions reveal more about justice than you might expect. As the dust settles on this shocking case, one truth becomes undeniably clear about the nature of evil and the price of justice. Today, Seandell Jackson sits in a concrete cell, his cocky smirks replaced by the harsh reality of forever. No more victims to terrorize, no more families to torment, just endless years to contemplate the moment he chose murder over mercy. But did dragging him away in chains truly heal the wounds he carved into the Potter family's hearts? Nathan's empty chair still sits at their dinner table. His mother still reaches for the phone on Sundays, forgetting for a split second that her weekly calls will never come. His father still wakes up in cold sweats, reliving that courtroom moment when Jackson mocked their grief. Justice served? Perhaps. But justice can never resurrect a 21-year-old dreamer who wanted to teach children, can never restore the safety that River West residents lost that September night, can never undo the trauma of watching pure evil laugh in the face of unimaginable loss. Jackson's uncle made an impossible choice: blood loyalty versus moral duty. He chose correctly, but the weight of turning in his own nephew will haunt him forever. Some victories come at prices no one should have to pay. The real legacy of Nathan Potter's murder isn't about the monster who killed him, it's about what his death revealed about the rest of us. What shocked you most? Jackson's courtroom theatrics, his family's betrayal, or the uncle's impossible decision? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe for more cases where justice and evil collide in ways you never expected.